shows up. I'm getting the sense that people are getting a little tired at this point. I know you're really looking forward to another dark pattern lab. There's not very many people here, but I'll say this anyway. Some of the things I will talk about could be disturbing, and if you feel the need to step away, please do so. Some of the things that you have to actually deal with when you build anything in the cloud that allows people to upload go beyond anything you could personally probably, I hope for your sake, you could personally probably imagine. Maybe you have a really vivid imagination, but so we talked about whole networks before. I think I made you look at their terms of service even. So I've been using that as a teaching example. Well, Whole Networks is in fact a real company. They've been around for quite some time. They're currently called Bright Data. And one of the things that I remember from last term when I gave this class, people noticed that they don't actually say what it is they're going to actually send over the connection that you're allowing them to send. Now, most people didn't read the terms of service anyway. But if you did read the terms of service, it just simply says, oh, we're going to use your idle bandwidth. One of the interesting challenges about doing things like this is that it means that your computer is now emitting someone else's traffic. And that means your IP address will appear in logs. Your devices and their signatures of your device can show up in forensic reports. You can actually be considered to have owned something. I actually have had some cases like that where literally the party has been accused of having something because a law enforcement operation saw the signature of something like that being sent from that computer. Now, I don't think I posted this time. Last time I actually used the stats scanner. They have a whole long report about specifically about the distribution of child pornography, which in the cloud business we call CSAM, because of course we want to sanitize it and step away from that. The reality is that people who are accused of it are almost never actually convicted. The conviction rate is about 8% after 5 years. But the average clearance time is about 30 months. So if someone uses your computer to distribute something that is considered to be criminal material, then you can actually live under that sort of cloud. And one of the things that I remember when I started looking at this is it was really hard to find data on what happens to the people who are exonerated. And the primary reason is because usually it destroys their lives and they literally leave, they move. Now that's not to say this is going to happen to you, but what I'm trying to do is show you that you have to be very careful and conscious of the effect that the things you build can have, because they can often have impact far beyond anything you even imagine could happen. Now on the flip side, I will warn you, don't use someone else's free VPN service. And if you use a VPN, which there's generally no real good reason to use a VPN, honestly, unless you're trying to like watch Netflix in some other country where something you want to watch is happening. That's what people really kind of use it for. And Netflix has figured this out, right? So they then know what the endpoints are. Oh, and by the way, of course, that's why residential proxies exist in the first place. Because commercial proxies run out of data centers, and commercial proxy services that are running out of data centers are easy to detect because I can take the IP address. It's very easy. There's plenty of websites that will do that. You give them an IP address. They'll tell you where the IP address is. And if it's a data center IP address, they'll know. They'll show who owns it. Oh, look, that belongs to Amazon. So those have traceability that a residential IP address doesn't. These are real examples. I wish I could say I was making these things up, but they've all actually happened at some point in time. So, and they can affect you in different ways. They can affect the things you build in different ways. Maybe you're building some sort of B2B app where you're like, oh, this is never going to happen. Great, that's fine. And you can just sleep for the next few minutes. The first one, which I'll go through in a minute, was really interesting. It was like a case where literally it wasn't until it was in court in front of the judge 2 years later that the lawyer was finally able to get someone to look at the fact that the server in question had been a surplus machine that had been purchased and was previously being used by the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation. At one point, the largest promulgator of child pornography in the United States was the U.S. Postal Service. It's honeypots. Anybody know what a honeypot is? That's what you use to catch people with. Except in this case, it's people who are trying to get this material. I presented this stuff last term, and there are people who kind of got upset with it, which is why I'm warning you, don't feel like you need to listen to any of this. But I do feel it's important. The conversation I had afterwards about that with the head of the department was, her comment was, well, you could just tell people that there's undesirable materials on the internet. And here's the problem I have with that. It's a complete whitewash. Undesirable material, the problem is it's not undesirable material to someone. If it was really undesirable material to anyone, it wouldn't be there. Every one of the cloud services actually provides extensive mechanisms for filtering and tracking and identifying this stuff on computers. Everything from signatures to automated analysis to, and this is the part that always bothers me every single time I talk about it, they use gig workers to look at things that I can't be sure about. And most of them burn out. It literally is PTSD, within 6 months. It's awful. The stuff that doesn't make it there is really, really bad. And you don't want to have to look at that. So let's walk through these. The surplus server buyer. That's what's actually really kind of interesting case. And it was told by the lawyer for the family that had been accused of this. They went and they bought some used hardware. It was a father buying stuff for his son who liked to tear computer equipment down and build new computers from it. And they plugged one of the machines in, and apparently it was still perfectly happy to talk to the internet, so it started talking to the internet. And lo and behold, the police show up, and they took all the computer equipment. They arrested, I think they arrested people, but they certainly seized the computer equipment. And if that were your computer, let's say you were saving some money, you decided you were just going to use free VPN, because hey, it costs $20 a month, might as well save that, you can buy an extra Starbucks, right? Yeah. You didn't read the terms of service, and so, I don't know what it is, but police like to do these kinds of things at 4 o'clock in the morning. And so you're out of university, you're working, you're making some money, not a huge amount, but you're making enough money to get by, and you're living in an apartment building, and of course you do this at 4 o'clock in the morning, and when the neighbors come out to try and figure out what's going on, because police don't usually do these sorts of things, the police don't feel any compunction to tell them what you're being arrested for. It's not secret information. So they seize all the devices, including the work laptop. So now you have to explain it to your employer. And the reason I'm doing it from this perspective is because you might be sitting there going, wow, holy shit, that could be me. That's kind of my point. It's hard to imagine people who are sitting in this empty chair talking about, oh, the people who are affected by this, versus realizing that sometimes you could be that person. It turned out they were actually able to do the forensic analysis. The defense lawyers, they did it. They figured out the licenses belonged to the FBI. The box was on an honeypot, and they just didn't scrub it. Do you know what happens when Amazon retires machines? retires equipment, it all has to go through a decertification process. It's a huge business, huge. You go into a data center today, the data centers are all, they're built around these things called racks, which is basically just a physical unit of hardware. And there's a whole bunch of different kinds of computers. They build them offsite, they bring them in, they wheel them in, they plug them in, and they let them run. And there's enough redundant hardware there that they will run for at least, the goal is to run for 3 to 5 years. And when enough hardware fails that they need to fix something in the rack, they replace the entire rack. They literally bring a forklift in, they slide underneath, they disconnect it, they pull everything out, they take it out, they bring a new one in, they set it in. I have a friend who works for a company that's what they do. And this company's been around for like a long time. So this is all old hat. They take that hardware, they take the material, they actually recycle it. The serial numbers are all tracked for it. I had somebody a few months ago, actually last term when I was teaching this, I had this expert broker in the UK who was looking for an expert on the trade of used computer equipment. So he was looking for an expert who could testify on behalf of an insurance company in Australia. These cases, I'm not even making this up, this is a real case. The company was in Australia. The claimant was, I don't even know, he didn't tell me where the claimant was, but it was about computer hardware that was shipped in a container that they claimed was lost between Hong Kong and Dubai. And they had pictures of stuff, and so he started showing me some of the pictures they have of the evidence of bills of lading and whatnot, and I'm like going, there's no serial numbers on any of this. So I'm pretty sure, and I had to go and I actually had to check it, but I verified that the difference between having a piece of computer equipment you can actually get money for and a piece of e-waste is whether or not you have the paperwork for it. It was pretty interesting, but yeah, it turns out if you don't have that paperwork, you don't have anything. And I went back to him, I said, I don't think you guys need an expert because there's no serial numbers here. And if no serial number, no loss or minimal loss because this didn't have value. The only way it has value is if it's still usable, and the only way it's still usable is if it has all of the serial numbers, the licenses that attach to those serial numbers, and the evidence that this was all properly sanitized. Precisely because you don't want to be the guy who's buying used computer equipment and finding out there's stuff on it that you shouldn't have. And that could be anything. It doesn't have to be illicit material. It can just as easily be somebody's confidential data. So the purpose of this idea of the empty chair is that it tries to help you step outside of the problem you're looking at and say, who else is impacted by this? Who else gets affected by it? And I'm taking a really heavy topic here precisely because I think it's important. Who is being traumatized by the distribution of CSAM? The legal theory is that it is in fact the subjects who were recorded. But I think it damages a lot more than just that. But it certainly damages that. It damages this poor the innocent people who also get entangled in this. And the people who are actually distributing this and making money on it don't really give a shit. I mean, honestly, they don't care. So the point of the empty chair is to say, what is the perspective of someone who's not here? How do I think about that? And actually, if you're using AI, it turns out they're pretty good at filling that empty chair. And you can say, I need you to fill the empty chair here. I need you to act like the parties that I'm not thinking about. It's just an ethical way of thinking about how the things I do affect other people. The Tor middle box operator. Anybody know what Tor is? The onion router? The onion router, yeah. What does it mean? What do you use it for?
For like anonymous browsing.
Anonymous browsing. But that's almost exactly as undesirable material. That's great, yes. Anonymous browsing. And what do people anonymous browse using Tor?
Anything.
They literally buy and sell weapons. Chemical weapons, drugs, you name it. Everything can be traded there, including illicit materials. Like drugs aren't illicit materials. It's been quite a while, but at one point there was this very famous website known as Silk Road, where you literally could go and hire mercenaries. Just casual kinds of things. Oh, I don't know, I think I'll hire a mercenary this week. To do what? And you know what all that is paid for, right? How people pay for these kinds of things, right?
Crypto. I got a party too.
By
Trump.
Oh gosh, I'm so surprised. I wonder how many coins he got for that. I shouldn't imply anything untoward there, right? Okay, so Tor is in fact a way of doing anonymous browsing. The way it does that is because it constantly changes the routing of your packets. So instead of having a stable path from your computer to the other computer, one time it goes this way, the next time it goes that way, the next time it goes that way. It just basically goes in different routes, in different ways, to make it difficult for someone to actually track where the original message came from. The primary exposure point for the Tor network is in fact the exit point. The point at which the packet that's been routed back and forth and around in circles inside the Tor network emits and just becomes an ordinary garden variety packet that goes wherever it's supposed to go. That's actually another use for residential proxies. And if you misconfigure, it can break the whole purpose of the obfuscation. A common way to misconfigure this is that you end up using local DNS instead of using an encrypted DNS. That's one way of finding it. There's a number of techniques they use here, but you just need to be aware. I walked in here and this was here, and I was like, oh, maybe I should take it home. Then I'm like, it's broken. Law enforcement often ends up doing these kinds of things. They do broad-scale scans. So they're looking for signatures. They're not necessarily looking for individual cases. They're not looking at your computers. What they do is they use the signatures of things that are prohibited, and then they use that as the basis of obtaining a warrant, and then they use that as a basis of seizing your devices. And eventually they, and assuming that they don't find anything, which does happen, they'll return the devices, but don't expect to see them for a couple of years. It's been, I guess it was about probably almost 2 years ago. I was talking to a defense attorney who had, that was what he specialized in actually, was people accused of CSAM distribution. And some of the cases he talked about were kind of dubious, like one person who was charged with possession of CSAM when it was pictures taken on the internal cameras in the home that caught a couple, I mean, they were talking about like 18 images out of 2,000 sort of thing, that showed someone without full clothing. It wasn't like, okay. So this is the other problem you run into, is that there are these situations and scenarios where you can't even really predict what people are going to think is undesirable material. My problem with the term undesirable material is that you could just as easily use that to describe any sort of censorship. Well, I'm sorry, that does not agree with the Orange One in Chief. So, you're going to get arrested for it now. We don't have an Orange One in Chief here in Canada, fortunately, but everybody knows who I'm talking about, I hope. Or maybe not. All right, who's sitting in that empty chair? This time it's the relay operator whose IP address gets logged, and anybody who's running infrastructure that routes other traffic. And ultimately, it's that person who gets the knock at the door because they misconfigured something, because someone used the network in a way they didn't approve of. My advice is don't offer to carry other people's traffic. But if you do decide to carry other people's traffic, then know that there are risks there. I think this is the one that probably upset the most people. That's why I said, if there's anything here that upsets you, I realize that there are people who may have actually been victims and that's fine. There's no, I'm not trying to imply anything. Okay. It's not uncommon for people who are under the age of, it's like the age of consent, my God, it's who are too young to have potentially objectionable materials. It's not uncommon for people to take pictures, willingly or unwillingly, and then later to have those things found on their own device. And it's really very strange that you can actually be accused of having CSAM for something that you took yourself, but you can't. The U.S. Department of Justice reported that the majority of those referrals are in fact actually peer-to-peer exchanges. I pointed this out last term and it upset some people. And I mean, I'm not suggesting that anybody would do this. I'm merely saying that perhaps you have a friend who's done it. Who's the victim here? If the original victim was coerced, the peer who received something that they shouldn't have without understanding the potential ramifications of that, people who forwarded it because it was funny at the time, they thought they were being insensitive, it doesn't matter. And now, in the end, if those pictures ever get revealed, they will be used pretty much permanently. This is all about content propagation, and that's why I said there actually are services that will filter these sorts of things. So if you're building an app, I don't think you're building an app, fortunately, but if you're building an app that allows people to upload images, videos, anything like that, you end up having to get involved in this. And I'm just wanting you to be aware that this is a real-world problem, and it's a very serious one. Many years ago, I actually had someone, I was teaching a kernel debugging class at Microsoft many years ago, and one of the people in the class, he was a Microsoft employee, and he had a written exemption from legal and corporate affairs to have pornographic materials, not necessarily, I'm not saying CSAM, pornographic materials in the facility itself. And it was like, okay, because Microsoft has a no porn policy, and you can be dismissed for that. Well, he had a written exemption for it because he ran the content filtering team. So this is the other side of that. This is the empty chair. It's like, oh, yeah, I guess you really can't actually build a content filtering product if you don't have test data. And that's the harsh reality. But yes, you end up with test data as well. So, gee, we've got, what, 6, 7 people, 8 people in here. So the groups can be as small as you want. You can hang out with yourself and chat GPT or something. I don't care. Get together. Broaden it beyond just this conversation and think about one of those scenarios. Actually, you can just take one of those scenarios, or if you want, you can take your own capstone scenario if you think that it's applicable, and say, who's my empty chair? Who's affected by what I do? How would I identify what I'm doing to protect them and verify that it actually is doing what I expect? I mean, is this possible? Is it economically viable? Does it have any legal meaning? I mean, why would I do it? And then finally, think about it, like that's why I said, think about it in terms of your own capstone. Most of you probably won't have capstones where this is an issue. But I don't know, maybe you're doing a chat app where people could start exchanging these things, and then it's like, oh my gosh, this becomes a lot more complicated, a lot faster. Have any of you ever used X? Right. So X allows people to upload videos and pictures, and so of course that means they have content filtering. Although I would note that they also can generate AI images that are pretty graphic. So I'm not, and that one's a really convoluted area because the original, I mentioned, the original idea behind CSAM was that it was harmful to an actual person. But when you remove the actual person, it becomes murkier legally. There's not been a lot of case law on that yet. Try not to be one of the first cases. All right, 15 minutes. I did warn you it'd be a little dark. Although the sun's coming out, so it's not so bad. Or you can check your polymarket standings and, run your trading algorithms. That works too. That's an interesting one. What would you do about who is the empty chair when it comes to something like polymarket? Because you can bet on anything, right?
Yeah.
So, you can literally make it pretty grim pretty fast. And the worst part about this business is that no matter how much I can imagine, reality is worse. Pretty fucked up. I know how to get nobody to attend the class. I'll just give everybody who came, I'll tell you, you're all going to get a 90. You just don't have to come ever again. And you just have to promise not to tell anybody else. And then we know they're not coming, so you get good grades and they didn't come. I could just come and hang out myself. We've got 9 people here out of a class of 47. It's like, and it's not snowing outside or anything either. And there's 47 people registered for the class right now. At one point there was like 80. And then it just, I don't know. I guess they got into the classes they really wanted.
That makes me look into that. I was gonna say.
It's like if Elon Musk would just like, he wanted more money, just spend his tweet number.
Oh yeah, you could just do that.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it like I saw this article posting online, like this guy's at the Grammy Awards or something, said like a crazy word. He was like 21241 or something, and he was like, for like guy who bet on that, probably not okay, like you got it. Like it could be him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe like it was an empty chair. Like it's the people who were on the other side
Yeah.
of the ring who use their money.
Yeah.
So oh, I bet you that's bets.
Yeah.
And then what's the system of that? Clause. I don't know, like identity verification. So like you have to like before you can, or maybe even after betting, you can only claim the money once you prove like your identity and like the fact that you can't you can fake the thing. So like the clause.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decent mitigation. You can still talk to it, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, but I mean, that's
the best.
yeah, that's the best you can do.
Yeah, it's sort of like identity verification process.
It's like the control.
Yeah. Claim. Yeah. Everyone who claims that money will and the control is the identity verification is. The test. What's the test? It's test that
The test that people who don't have verified identity, test that they can, but then it's not able to do the expense and stuff. Like you can make an account, then verification is separate.
Okay. Boom. Assess feasibility. Feasibility possible, but easily.
Yeah, it's somewhat meaningful, but relatively easily bypassed.
Yeah.
If you care enough to verify, you just don't come to you.
Yeah.
And there's like some insane one other too. Like, there's the price of the stock. Like the data publicly available is not correct. And so when you could buy like below for like 26 cents,
Oh,
then
wow.
some guy with a Bloomberg terminal that would I think 40K with like 5,200. Guaranteed.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I guess in our case, like we're gonna find the castle by saying that we have to have identification. That's fine.
Yeah, it could be helpful.
That's kind of hard to.
Just drop key personally if we don't have to. Or if we just get a third party, but for us it doesn't matter too much.
Oh yeah.
Just say no.
Okay. to say, I got confused by signing the team report. But I just have to sign up the team report. Yeah. Yeah, now this is like college. You just like work group matches for the rest of it. Sure. I'll be good. We can manage those back. And then like, yeah, I mean, something that's like NPM window. Because now we have like the symptoms that are giving us the
Okay. So what'd you come up with?
What did you say?
I said, what did you come up with?
We did polymarket, and then the scenario that we came up with is like people just rating the bets. Okay, because there's bets on Elon's Twitter. So I mean, theoretically, someone close to Elon or like Elon himself could just tweet a certain number of times and bet on it.
So market manipulation.
Yeah.
So who's the empty chair in the case?
It's the people who are betting, but maybe they don't realize realize that it can be rigged, or they just don't know that it's being rigged.
So that's sort of a specific instance of the general model of an insider trader.
Yeah.
So you know something that the market doesn't know, so you use that in order to profit.
Well, and you're controlling it too. Like that's like the bigger thing is like.
Well, okay, so a more insidious form of that, and one you could actually do as a nice cloud product, is you could actually, you can do pump and dump schemes, where you take some sort of stock and then you distribute information, stories, like you post on X, you do TikTok videos, those kinds of things, and you promote something to try and inflate its price, so then you can sell the stock that you bought at a profit.
Chump coin.
Sorry?
Chump coin.
Chump coin! Okay, right, exactly. Well, and in fact, I would argue that a lot of cryptocurrencies have been those kinds of pump and dump promotion schemes. But nobody gets harmed for that, right?
Everyone who bought it. It's like when all the influencers, they're trying to get their fans to buy their shitcoin, and then they just dump it.
Right. Right. So in fact, what ends up happening is that it becomes a way of moving money from someone's pocket to someone else's pocket. I mean, that's okay. That's what commerce is. Why is there anything harmful about this? This is the really interesting question. It's one thing to say, well, that's kind of a sucky thing to do. It's a different thing to say, why?
It's basically like stealing because it's guaranteed that they're going to lose the money.
It's a form of fraud. In other words, I'm promoting something to you by telling you that you're going to make money from it, but you're not. This is a con. It's just a variation on a con game. And so the reason that we don't want to encourage that is because it undermines trust. How many of you have ever actually been cheated out of anything? It doesn't have to be money.
Nothing comes to mind, but I'm sure at one point in my life.
A really interesting cloud computing project is to build a portfolio dashboard, portfolio management dashboard. So you build a portfolio management dashboard, and you need to test that. So you put test data behind it. So now you have a portfolio management dashboard, you have test data. You can actually verify that it looks like when somebody puts money in, because those are your test transactions, right? You put some money in there, you show a couple of days later that the value of the account has gone up, you take money out, it shows that the money, the amount of money in the account has gone down. Very standard sort of straightforward cloud computing app. And now you use that to convince people to invest in your opportunity. And so they transfer their Bitcoin to you, and you show the deposit in their portfolio, and you show that they're starting to make money on that. And then there's a dip, and you come back and you go, oh, this is a good time to buy some more. And so they buy more. And it bounces back up. It bounces around and bounces back and forth. Except that there is nothing behind the portfolio. How can you tell the difference between a legitimate portfolio app and an illegitimate one? There's been a big crackdown in the last 6 months on organizations that run various kinds of scams of this type, where that is one of the spins, is literally they tell you it's a great investment deal, they get you hooked, they show you that you're making money. Sometimes they even let people take money out never more than you put in, though. How much money do you think you could get from someone this way? I mean, don't cap it by your own personal net wealth. Any of you have older relatives with some money in the bank? Do you think they could take all of their money?
Probably not.
Right. And how would you feel if you found out that one of those relatives was now in trouble financially because of that?
Bad.
And how would you feel if it was because you built the app that did? And I'm not saying this is what's going to happen. I'm just simply trying to help you understand why I think that this is an important perspective, why you need to be able to think about that and say, well, what are you doing with this thing? It's really easy. And believe me, I'm sitting here and I'm giving you all these things and telling you this is, trying to be ethical and whatnot, and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to get out there in the real world, you're going to get a job, and that's what they're going to tell you to do. Oh, well, we need you to build this thing. And you're going to be like going, okay. It's like the whole terms of service thing. Okay, how do I test to make sure that we're properly implementing our terms of service? And the engineering manager says, don't worry about it. It's like, really? Company's not your friend. They're not there to protect you. They're there to protect themselves. And if you don't do it, you're going to get fired. And if you do it, then you're going to be doing something unethical that might backfire in the future. And that's not a really great place to be. What I am suggesting, though, is that you probably want to make that decision or think about that possibility before it happens, because when it does happen, you'll have to think fast. And if you haven't thought about it up front, you're going to be like, what? Deer in the headlights. And here, at least, now you've given it a few minutes of thought. Anybody else come up with anything interesting? Did you come up with anything that applied to your capstone? Yes, no? Did you come up with anything that applies to your capstone in terms of empty chair? No. Okay. How about you guys?
So I'm working on a medication tracking app.
Yep.
So the users would upload their prescription information, and so the clause would be, their images would be encrypted, and then the controls would be ensuring that there's an encryption that's in place and enforced.
So there's an interesting question. Who sits in his empty chair? Anybody here take? No, I won't ask that because I don't want to upset anybody. All right. Let's suppose there is someone that you know who actually takes medications that for a condition that they might not want people to know they have. You're taking medication for premature baldness. That's the person in his empty chair. That's the person that he's trying to protect. Any of you use TikTok? Do you know that TikTok every 30 seconds keeps track of where you are? It's quite amazing how much information the TikTok app actually scrapes off of your phone. It knows a lot about you. And what's very interesting about that is that it knows where you're spending your evenings. So if you're involved with someone, it knows. And that's really interesting because that means that if they have the same app, they know that who it is. And you don't necessarily think about that. So again, who's the empty chair in that case? The people who actually are now being identified in ways they never even imagined would happen to them. And And I don't think TikTok cares, right? All right, so a template for what we're talking about, for the clause control test, who's the vulnerable party? How are they being protected? What is the mechanism you're using in order to ensure that they are protected? How you're verifying that it's working? Now, the simplest thing is you build this first, and it red bars, and then you build this, and that goes green, and now you know that if someone else comes along and breaks this, this will alert me to it. You do need to have a level of specificity here beyond vibe describing it. Yeah, we use encryption. ROT 13, right? Do you know what ROT 13 is? It's not encryption. It's basically a simple substitution cipher. We kind of did this, that's fine. I think to keep in mind here is that there's not always going to be a perfect technological solution to all of the problems you come up against, especially in this particular domain. You can't unassociate your IP from where it was logged. You can't prove the absence of knowledge. So if they find something on your device that you didn't know about, you can't prove that. And there's no way for them to know the distinction between intent and possession. The systems we build for this all have real costs associated with them. So we build content filters, we do pattern matching, hash matching, we do flagging of things automatically. But underneath this, there are always people who are actually looking for these things. They're actually checking to see. And that's an empty chair as well. The people who actually make many of these decisions, who actually have to watch those. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's not just the kind of horrible images I was talking about before, but it can be beheadings, it can be killings, torture. Those things are actually recorded and are uploaded online all the time. So content filtering isn't just about CSAM, it's also about other kinds of material that can be troublesome. But where's the line? I see some people on YouTube who are always complaining about how YouTube demonetizes their videos because they're showing footage from the war in Europe. And they have a certain point that stripping everything like that out is a solution. This is why I said sometimes there's no good technical solution to these things. They tend to err on the side of censoring something, of stripping it out, versus trying to make the fine distinctions of what should be allowed and what shouldn't be allowed. So, Holy Networks ended up becoming Illuminati and then turning to Bright Data, which is a $1.5 billion company. The business, I guess it's not that big. It's a very profitable business, I can tell you that much. The business model really doesn't change. They just changed the name a couple of times. They had class action lawsuits against them. They are part of a larger ecosystem of people who sell residential proxies, and they still check those. The apps still don't check to see if your ISP allows this or not. Your ISP may very well prohibit you serving as a proxy server endpoint. Now, ISPs probably don't really check that either. I don't know if UBC does that on UBC networks or not. I know that they don't allow certain things. I had to stop streaming classes on Twitch because it doesn't work. I don't know what they do, but it just doesn't go through. It's like they throttle it.
We have CCTs, refinements, those should be done in your repo. You do have peer reviews. I think the peer review model, I just had somebody asking me about this. I think the peer review model is that I asked you to just pick projects of people that you don't know and do some reviews. So you can go and you can scan and see what you find interesting. And one of the reasons for that is that there's some people who basically haven't done anything. So I can assign you peer reviews, but then you're going to come back to me and you're going to go, oh, they didn't do anything, so I can't really do any kind of peer review. The purpose behind peer review is to find ways of asking them questions about what they're doing and saying, have you considered this? It's not to say, wow, this is really cool, which is fine by itself, but it's not very substantive. Anytime you provide peer review, what you want to do is provide feedback with something that is actionable. That's why I like questions. Have you considered? I saw you did this, but are you sure it will work in this scenario? Because those are things that people can actually do something with. Whereas if you just simply give them a vibe feel, wow, it's a great project, it's not very useful. And on the flip side, when you get peer review, I want you to look at it and say, was this peer review useful? The reason that we're using GitHub Issues is because somebody posts an issue there, you can actually respond to it. And then later, when I'm looking, I can say, did you really do a good peer review, or did you do a poor peer review? Did the peer reviews you get come back well, and did you respond to them appropriately? And that's the normal flow you're going to experience in the real world anyway, because that's what happens. Somebody comes along, they raise an issue, you address the issue. The issue needs to be substantive, and your response to it needs to be substantive. You can reject it, that's fine. I'm not saying you have to do what somebody tells you to do. That's not critical thinking, that's just simply, I don't know, being a slave to the system, I guess. In a case of critical thinking, what I'm looking for is for you to be able to step back and to say, this is a good point, I agree with it, I disagree with it, and here's why. And this is what I'm going to do. And maybe what I'm going to do is nothing. I'm not going to do this because the analysis was wrong. They are mistaken. What they said I didn't do is in fact done over here. I had Claude. I've been doing lots of automated kinds of reviews like this. So one of the things that I do in one of the projects, I literally have it set up so that it picks different models off of OpenRouter and asks them to go and review pieces of the code base. And Claude was so amused by the fact that a Quen 2.5 3B model found an error that was created, a false statement, actually, by GPT-OSS 120B. So what that means is the Quen model was a 3 billion parameter model, very small model, not considered to be super powerful, and GPT-OSS 120B is a 120 billion model, so 40x the number of parameters. It's a mixture experts model from OpenAI, and it's open weight. So these are very different models, and the Quen model was able to not only identify the false statement, but then included the evidence, because there was an evidentiary requirement, included the evidence. It said this was the case, it's wrong, and here's the line of code in this file that proves it. So it's automated. And I was like, that's so funny. But the best part was how Claude just thought this was hilarious. It's like, wow, this little tiny model, and the whole David and Goliath vibe. It was very interesting. And that's the kind of thing I want to see. I want to see people who say, so they take your code and they say tell them, GPT-OSS 120B, go vibe review that and come up with a couple of things that I can bitch about. And then it comes back and it gives them some bullshit. They cut and paste it into your issues log because I don't know why, but they did. It's too hard to actually look at the code yourself. It was too hard to actually even verify that what
the model had fabricated up was wrong, you can go back and you can actually then say, sorry, this is wrong. That's perfectly acceptable. That's actually quite reasonable. And that's going to happen to you in the real world, even when people aren't using AI to try and review your code. I mean, how many of you have actually written any code for your capstone at this point? How many of you expect to write any code for your capstone at all? Why? I mean, I'm serious at this point. It's kind of weird, but I don't write a lot of code anymore. I spend a lot of time directing AI to write code. Now that has changed. It is definitely changing. I am writing less and less code every day. And that's changed since the beginning of this term. That's the scariest part. What models do you use? GPT-5?
Codex.
5.2? Oh, you're using Codex, okay. Snarky little model it is, yes. How are you? He's in the, what model are you using?
I'm just using Cursor Auto. I'm too lazy. I'm just using Cursor Auto right now.
Okay. ChatGPT. Same? Oh, yeah, there's so much of that. Oh, I gotta be, OpenAI.
Claude.
There you go.
Codex.
Gemini, okay? Oh, no, that's actually ChatGPT, sorry. Okay. Gemini, there you go. Claude.
Opus and Sonic. Those two.
Claude. Okay? Claude, there we go. I kind of cut out Gemini. I found that it was, aside from very expensive when it goes off and does its own thing. I don't know, I just found the quality wasn't as good at the time. I might go back to it, I don't know. I thought of it.
It's just free for students for a year.
There you go. Okay, now we understand it. Actually, it's really interesting. In OpenRouter, they have a virtual router now. Somebody pointed out to me. They have a virtual router that just goes to free instances, and that's API. That's API usage. It's like, cool. So you can actually route things. Now, you're probably agreeing to let them use your data, but if you don't care, that's actually pretty interesting. And sometimes the models you get are pretty good. Like you can get DeepSeek, and I've seen Kimi, and I've seen Grok, all free. I haven't seen OpenAI or Anthropic. I did see actually Gemini, because Gemini was free for a while there as well. And it's hard to beat free. So at this point, you should be putting things in your repo about your capstone pretty regularly. I mean, it doesn't have to be huge, but part of the reason I'm doing this is because I want you to be thinking about this and engaging. Good design doesn't happen in a 24-hour period. Shitty design happens in a 24-hour period. Good design happens when you pick up the problem and you start talking about it and you think about it and then you forget about it and then you're like walking to class one day and you're like, oh, wow. You have this like idea because your brain will literally sit there and work on things. Next week we're going to be talking about observability. Observability is about what are we measuring? Oh, sorry, next week. That's week after next. Sorry, because next week we're not doing classes. What are we measuring? Why are we measuring it? Who benefits from it? And observability is really important. It's very important when it comes to debugging. It's very important to understanding what's going on, how things work. So a couple people are using Claude. I've actually got my Claude instrumented now, so every time it does a compaction, I grab the compaction record and store it away so I can actually see what's being sent to Claude. Pretty interesting. Over time, you get to see patterns of what it thinks is important. And that's all I have for today. So, as I said, next week is reading week, and I will see you week after next. Okay, what is that, Tuesday the 24th? Yeah, all right. Have a good one. Oh, wait. Anybody want a slightly abused, broken? Okay.